All right, I think we're ready to start now. Man, having some issues. Updated OBS and just have one of those times where it's just everything seems to not quite work right. So still getting everything a little bit set up. So hang out with me as people start to join in, and we're going to get the stuff set up for the stream. We're going to do the NPC builder. We're going to keep working on that stuff. So hold tight while I pull up that stuff and this here. There. I don't believe we moved that. How you guys doing? I'm doing okay. Got a little bit of heartburn. Ate a spicy burrito earlier and is fighting me. It's gonna fight me all the way down. But I'll win. I always win. House always wins, and I'm the house for food. Yeah, that works. All right. I don't think. I think everything should. Hopefully. All right. I am forgetting something. I have no clue what it is, so we're just gonna move on and pretend like I remember that everything's going the way it's supposed to be going. All right, this is gonna be a working stream. That's what I was gonna do, because I haven't set this up yet. Here we go. For window capture. That is not the right one. That's the right one. There we go. That kind of day. Bez. Yes, just having all the technical issues. That's okay. No flubs. We'll be fine. We'll move on from this. We will persist. We will overcome. Alright, yeah, so, hey, if you're joining for the first time, hey, thanks for checking out the channel. Welcome into the stream. It's going to be a working stream. Not familiar with that, that means that I'm going to be working on stuff. So if you want to see a Dungeon Master or Game Master do some actual work, even though I'm not prepping for this session because we did most of the prep already, for my upcoming session this week. So this is more working on trying to refine some of my NPC generation information. So hopefully you'll find some of that useful, whether you're running D&D 5.5, 5e, one of the other numbers of D&D or Pathfinder or whatever it is. It's all very consistent. You need NPCs for any TTRPG. Yeah, I think that's true. I can't think of one where you don't need NPCs. The thing that jumped to my mind was Bethesda's launch of Fallout 76 with no NPCs in the game. It's like, but they still had a bots in it. So I guess also not true. I don't think there was any spoken line language. I don't know. That's off topic. It's not important. I'm sure that you will correct me if I am wrong, which I probably am. That's okay. I'm gonna hop over here. Alright, so we've got everything pretty much pulled up so we can pick up where we are. So we'll go over the stuff that we did last time, and then we'll move on from that. You know what? The first thing I'm going to do is, because it's a working stream, I'm going to listen to some music, which means that, unfortunately for you, we're gonna cut the background music because I'm going to listen to stuff that's definitely licensed. So good luck with that. So obviously I can't show that. For today, I'll show you what. No, here, I'll pull it up for the full screen to you real quick. I got a couple things in the playlist right here. We're going to listen to Yoko Kanno's Wolf's Rain, the orchestral and instrumental collection, and after that, Seirei no Moribito, so OST, by somebody named Shinji over on YouTube. So, thanks Shinji. Shout out there. So that's what we're going to do. I definitely really like Wolf's Rain. It's follow-up to Cowboy Bebop, so if you're not as many people have seen it, and that's for good reason. It is certainly flawed. It's certainly not the greatest anime of all time. But the music in it is very good. I think I might like the music in it more than Cowboy Bebop. I think it depends a lot on my mood. For Cowboy Bebop's very much jazz. Wolf's Rain has a lot more variety. It's got some very guitar heavy, it's very band heavy. So a lot of rock, a lot of some Spanish guitar stuff, some acoustic guitar stuff. It's very interesting. A lot of harmonics and stuff like that. Very cool. Listen to the music, I suppose. You can listen along with me. And then I couldn't remember anything about Moribito's soundtrack other than I liked the show, so I'm sure the soundtrack was fine. So maybe this will be a nice refresher for me. Alright, let's do it. I hit the play button. That's the good stuff. Alright. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what I had already done. So basically I've taken a whole bunch of stuff that I've had and kind of collating it all together. We're going to bulk everything together, and then we're going to cut and edit stuff down until I get to something I want. Because I realized as I was making NPC stuff, especially for kind of like the solo RPG stuff and world building stuff, doing the hex mapping and stuff like that, is like I wanted something that was a little bit more robust, but also maybe a little bit faster at the same time. So I'm hoping that it's tough to get those two things together. So we'll see if we can make something that's a little bit more variety, but also a little bit quicker in the generation. And so I put together some of the stuff that we had already looked at. Most of this, everything that we've got down is from my own sources, and now we're going to look mostly at stuff that we haven't, that are from other published sources or from outsourced sources, so it's not just my brain stuff. Alright, so consideration, like the type of NPC was really important when we were thinking about it. Is that you had these functionary NPCs, which are basically, they just do a thing, mostly. Your shopkeepers and stuff like that, where maybe it's important to know kind of like what their ancestry is, maybe what they look like, but otherwise it's like their job is how you would refer to them. They probably don't even have a name in most regards. You know, those shallow short-term NPCs, which are going to be like allies you have for a very specific mission, or a deputy to a villain. So a Sir Guy to the Sheriff of Nottingham kind of thing. And then your deep long-term NPCs, which are generally patrons or villains, though patrons can also be short-term. So we might as well put in there. So we'll do this. We'll do like a one-off patrons, and then we'll have like long-running patrons. And you could say the same for, I guess we'll keep it all on one line. I guess you could say the same thing for like your allies too. Sure, maybe. You have a shopkeeper that you go back to a whole bunch, or you have a hireling or something like that. Those would all kind of fall within that realm as well. One of the things that I like is I think that the way that I've recognized that I really enjoy doing with NPCs is basically starting out only making these kind of NPCs, only kind of that functional NPC. And the more times that the players go back to the well on it, is the more like, oh, now I can add something else to it. And if they take the time to like learn the NPC's name and stuff like that, and want to know more about them, or ask them about their stuff, or something that an NPC that keeps recurring either because I'm bringing it up, or the players keep going back to that same person for whatever reason, because they're, I don't know, a guild master, whatever. That then you start to sprinkle in a little bit more detail, a little bit more detail, a little bit more detail, a little bit more detail. So they go from functional to shallow, or these short-term NPCs, then to these deep long-term NPCs. They start to have a real relationship. They've had a whole bunch of interactions with them. The quality is very much determined by the amount of times that they interact with them. So quality is quantity in this regard, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to make a really in-depth NPC, and I think that's where a lot of Dungeon Masters really fall, where they're like, oh, nobody's paying attention to my world and things like that. It's because I made this big, deep, textured world with all these NPCs in it, and they all have these goals and their family life and all this other stuff, and the daily schedule about all these things they're doing, and my players are not interested in talking to them basically at all. They're like, oh, can I buy some more arrows? Yeah, great. Let me tell you about my family. Nope, thank you. Just need the arrows, actually. And I'm not going to ask for that guy's name, and we're going to continue on our adventure. So instead, it's like I want the players to lead me a little bit as to which ones are going to be a little bit more important to them. Now, obviously, if you're running things like villains or you have patrons, you have a lot of say as a Dungeon Master over who they are and how how much spotlight they kind of get in the game. What are the building blocks of that? I think Ancestry is the big one, having a universal roll table or a location-specific roll table. That's something that I do with my setting, because I have the different ancestries geographically spread out all over my custom world setting. So there's a general kind of idea about how many of each type of ancestry there are, but there's also places you go where there's a lot. Their amount or their quotient of how many there are, or percentage of that population, is very, very different. So like for right now, we're running the campaign I'm running in. I just kind of picked it randomly in the world and just like picked a spot, and then thought, oh, this would be an interesting spot, and kind of plucked it down on the map. And I happened to choose a place where there are functionally no humans. There's not even a significant like 1% population of the population around there is human. So it's been very interesting, both as a dungeon master, to be like, oh, and as players, I think, to like reset the baseline and be like, human is not the most common denominator here. In fact, it's actually halflings, I think. Halflings and half-elves. Or halfers and half-elves, technically. And in fact, we've come across some anti-human sentiment, as well as a little bit of I guess, elf sentiment. The history of the lore of the world, there's humans and elves don't love each other based off of, some prior ethnic warring, but also specifically don't like half-elves. Sort of because of what they represent. The kind of one foot in each world, but also not being of either aspect. We got those roll tables, and then we talked about this last time. Usually when I do those D100 rolls for the roll table of Ancestry, I just roll that in and be like, that tells me whatever their gender is. And then Heritage, if they're going to have like some sort of sub-ancestry, so if it's important to know whether they are like a high elf or a wood elf or something like that. Next we have physical description, and we're starting off with age, a 2d6 roll. This is one thing that I wanted to incorporate more, because otherwise everybody always seems to fall within this category, within that adult space category. And I was like, but that feels very weird. It feels very monotone when everybody's roughly within 15 years age of each other. I was like, I need to swap that out. And of course, these are only human ages, so an elf's not going to be an elder at 66 years, but what would be the equivalent to that ancestry? Height, which I think, I guess I didn't put it in here, but we can do that. Oh, I think it's because I wanted to change it. Because I had a 1d6 height chart, and I think I want to change that to a 2d6, so it's a little bit more like the age chart and a little bit less like the build or frame chart, which is a 1d6. So we've got width, height, age, tells us that, and then background. Where are they from? Are they locals? Are they from a little bit further away? Are they rural, urban? Are they an outlander? And what is their job or occupation? And that tells us a little bit about sort of the features and proficiencies to add that stuff in. Their personality, talking about their attitude towards the PCs or adventurers. That's that 2d6 kind of reaction table, very OSR flavored. About whether they're aggravated or disinterested or open or neutral or friendly or they're helpful, and kind of what each one of those means. So generally for an NPC, we don't start off ever at hostile. There is an old Lindy Beige YouTube video that talks about the degrees of aggression and escalation of violence, which is very interesting to watch. If you ever have a moment to go find it out, it's Lindy Beige. This is his channel. You can find it. It's an old video. It's an old video. But what I like about it is it talks about how, it doesn't go from just like 0 to 100. It's like talking to then like pushing, and then usually some sort of physical violence as far as like punching or kicking or something like that. And then it goes like the one step further, and then it becomes like weapons drawn. And using that as a meter as to how to do some conflict resolution that's a little bit, I was gonna say realistic, but really more intuitive to how real people function, a little less like, I think that I've had this experience, and I think this is a very common experience that a lot of dungeon masters or game masters have, where you're like, oh, I'm going to make this cool. I decided that I wanted to make like a bar fight, like a tavern brawl encounter. There's like, oh, it's just a fun thing to kind of like make sure that there's like a little bit of combat that's in the session, or as a fun way to kind of get the party together or something. And then you start it off, and then immediately one of the PCs pulls a weapon. You're like, okay, well, that drastically escalates what's going on here. Because I remember doing that. I have a very specific memory in my mind of having a PC when I was running tables at a game store, and just random person comes in, drops down, they want to play a ranger, opens with the tavern fight, immediately pulls out a bow and starts plugging people with arrows, and I'm like, okay. Tavern brawl is immediately over. People are screaming and running in different directions because you are now using a weapon. And the guards are going to show up. We've got that attitude towards the PCs. The manner, which is the 12 personalities, I've done a video about. Or you can go find it. I'm sure we will touch on it later, but the way that I like to do it is it's a mixture of 3 different kind of metrics or different values that we're looking at. And then some sort of quirk, some sort of mannerism or something. Then having a finishing touch, which is a name or a personal goal or side quest. We need to get that deep into them. Like I said, a lot of NPCs don't even need names, so really don't worry about it that much. But I did want to put one of the things we have down here. Oh, I just skipped over it. It's at the very top. Distinguishing feature as the last of the physical descriptors. That's the physical version of the quirk. And then I go back and forth as to, do they need a quirk and a distinguishing feature, or should they only have one or the other? I think probably one or the other, because both of those things serve the same purpose, which is just simply be like, oh, here's a thing, like a shorthand for the players to be able to remember this person easily. Because if you have players like mine, and I've had throughout my DMing or GMing career, they tend to not remember NPC names, but they'll remember, oh, it was the elf with the eye patch. We go see her. Like, yes, I know who you're talking about, and you know who you're talking about. So we're on the same page. Learn the NPC's name. If you want to refer to them. And then those finishing touches. And then I've got some of the stuff down here that I had that we're saving up that we'll fiddle with later, where we start putting all this stuff together. Distinguishing features, which there were a whole bunch of. Ages and kind of what that means, the NPC goals, stuff like that. A lot of this stuff is from Ironsword, where we kind of ended last time, where we pulled a whole bunch of stuff in. That was I think, too long explanation. I apologize. We're going to get into it. So now we're going to get into things where I pulled some stuff that's kind of that I've had for a long time, but is a little difficult sometimes to remember how old it is or how long I've had it. Both of these are going to be quite old, but I try to give credit to what I remember. So this is a one-roll NPC generator. Really good. Zoom in on this. I hate it when it does this. Pulls up all this space to just tell you a comment. And the comment is, this is from Zandalfire@gmail. This is who made this common NPC generator with the Comic Sans heading. And it's kind of a one roll. You kind of roll all the dice, right? I think, except a d20. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit. 125, maybe 150. This text. See if there's anything useful here. Don't really care that much about the instructions. Okay, so we got our ancestries. We know that's there. We've got rolling 1d4, and that's going to tell us their gender, as well as some little naming things. So this feels like it should be first, because otherwise you're getting the N part of the name first. I have a whole D100 table that I use. I think I showed it last time. A D100 table of random name stuff. Unless it's in. No, that's mine. D names? Nope, that's also mine. Too bad. I know I've shown it off before. Or it has a similar structure like this. You roll 1D100 for the first part of the name, the second part of the name, and the third part of the name. Tends to make real weird names. We can roll one though. So that's going to be 2d6, I guess, and a... Or is each of these depend on their... 1, 5, 6, 8. Oh, okay. So spend it on their ancestry first. Interesting. Okay, cool. Let's roll it just for fun. Why not? Nope. 4. Alright, so this is a human. How boring. Alright, so 6, 6, and then 4. 5, 6, 3. Alright, so 5, 2, 3, 4. Zach. Nothing. Zacher. Is that right? Oh, sorry. One more over. Zacchus. Or Zakas. Alright. I mean, it's something. Interesting. Alright, so here we're going to have, seems very much the distinguishing marks stuff. Tattooed, pierced, or unusual. Unusual is not that helpful for a table like that. Like, I'm rolling to try to find that thing out. We also get, oh, it also uses like size descriptors too. They are long. I assume they mean tall. And large. They're loud or extravagant. Short, small, quiet, or simple. Missing, injured, or damaged. Particularly beautiful or ugly. They're colorful, dyed, or painted. Right now, I haven't hit anything that I think is not something I already have in my own list. Except for maybe extravagant, because I think I have that kind of under like gauche or gaudy as far as like how they're dressed. Something about their nose or voice? I'm interpreting this table wrong. Eyes or eyebrows. Mouth, lips, or laugh. You're hearing. Yeah, these two tables can't go together though. That would be. I should read the instructions. That's what I should do. D6 and D10 will provide a noticeable feature. So it's for this next one. Gotcha. It's not 2D6 table. It's a D6 and a D10 table. That makes way more sense. 10 and this. Alright, so 1 and 6. So they're tattooed, pierced, or unusual, and 6. Okay, so a physical body part, and then what's weird about it. Cool, alright. I like that. This might be a little bit different than I kind of like that. Maybe we should ink that. I think it's a good idea. Obviously, I'm not going to use it as one-to-one, but I do like the idea of maybe gives us a little bit more versatility to choose a type of mark and then maybe what about their feature. It is 2 rolls to do the same thing. It is 2 rolls to do 1 roll, though. So they could have a tattooed head or forehead or face, a pierced head, forehead, or face, probably face. So they might have some sort of dermal piercing. Or they have an unusual head, forehead, or face. Maybe they have like the, was it like saline injections? Give them like bumps and stuff. Or, you know, Something's just weird with them. Got a interesting face. They've got an interesting. But see, tattooed piercer unusual would work very weird with clothing. Like, is it like the clothing they're wearing has like rings sticking off it, like studs? And they like clink or something? Studded leather kind of situation, though that's not what I would consider uncommon in fantasy. So some sort of unusual clothing. And unusual clothing is good. Like, that's a good distinguishing mark, but it doesn't tell me how it's unusual. So then that all that onus is on me, kind of the dungeon master, to figure that out. Yeah. And the starting from the bottom and building the name is weird. All right, so there's some cool stuff here, but I don't think there's anything that kind of knocks it out of the park for me. I don't think this is going to be all too different from our distinguishing marks. Some here graceful, they're handsome, or ugly, or androgynous. Even though I could get rid of androgynous because I have changed that under more up here under ancestry, with the number telling me how sort of like stereotypically gendered they are. You have some sort of scar, discoloration, birthmark, notable jewelry or clothes, notable feature, some sort of odd hair, missing body part, tattoo, some clothes or gear. Is there a distinguishing thing? Tattoo or scar, head, facial, body hair, decoration or jewelry, facial feature. They're stoic, attractive, which kind of doubles up with handsome. But obviously, this stuff's quite old and needs to be gone back through. So we can do some of that right now. I like attractive better than handsome. We can remove androgynous altogether. Oh, actually, you know what? Instead of doing that, I'm going to be like... gender reversed. So it's a little bit like, oh, you have a classic tomboy situation, or a male who's exceedingly feminine, whether they are androgynous or not, as far as their kind of aesthetically their body, but how they present themselves, very different. So there was a time not that long ago when it became, actually I guess it happened in the Met Gala too, the recent one, where you have men wearing skirts and things like that, same sort of thing. So some sort of gender first. I hate to say presentation because that makes it think that it is about their gender. I don't think it is. Stoic, attractive, passive, or aloof. Passive and aloof are very similar to each other. So I'm thinking passive. Aloof, affectionate, generous, smug, armed, clever, brave, ugly. Didn't we have ugly already in here? Sociable, doomed, connected, bold, jealous, angry, active, suspicious, hostile. Hostile and angry are not quite the same thing. Now, hostile could be very interesting because right now we don't have anything that's... Maybe this would be better just if we crush out both and be like... Maybe we just put temper. They have a temper. Hard-hearted, successful, talented, experienced, deceitful, ambitious, aggressive, conceited, proud. Conceited and proud are very close to each other, as is smug. I'm going to leave them how they are for right now. You have disfigured in here. Yeah, which I would constitute as being somewhat different than scarred or discolored with a birthmark. Yeah, I would say that disfigured is slightly different. Figured is generally like somebody did that to you. Different than just having a scar or some sort of like port wine or vertigo or something like that. Intolerant, skilled, stingy, timid. It's very close to passive. Insensitive is very close to hard-hearted. I think a number of these are actually, yeah. So a number of these are taken from Ironsworn. Not all of them, because they only have D100 tables. So some of this is from some other sources, so that needs to be cleaned up for sure. But I'm not seeing anything in here that's super different. Even though a lot of these distinguishing features would be something that I would maybe put under quirks or mannerisms. Really more about their personality than, except for some things like strong. Okay, all right. So I think we have done everything we needed from this guy. So I think we're gonna give this one the check mark. Some of the stuff is really old that I pulled out, and it's by no means everything I have, but it is things that kind of jumped to mind when I was kind of looking around. That kind of like grab bagged a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, we could sit here and do this for. I have so much stuff that we could be sitting here doing this for literal days, probably, if not maybe even over a week. I have a lot of TTRPGs. I've been doing this a while. Let's go ahead and give this the check mark, because I think we got everything. I do kind of like the matching body part with what we're talking about, or the aspect, really, because some of it's like clothing. So I'm gonna put that in here as like a potential. Body part or clothing plus like maybe item. Plus, I guess, descriptor. Like what's making it distinguishing. Good then. I'll just put some question marks around that, so I know that that's a question for me later when I'm going back through things. Be like, what do I think about this again? All right. This is the NPC appearance, personality, faith, and flaws. This is from Behind the Tables on Reddit. Really cool subreddit. If you've ever checked it out, it's definitely worth it to check out. It's got a whole bunch of interesting stuff. Some of it's really good, some of it's not so good. But what you'll get is a lot of it. The quality may vary, but the quantity is very high. Spend a lot of time looking through it. I would like to spend more time there. Unfortunately, I had some not great experiences with some of the community there. I don't do stuff with them, unfortunately. So I think this will drop us back in there. So okay. So facial features, so eyes, ears. This, like, if you use all these things together, you're gonna have a ton of stuff. First thing that I'll talk about. Well, you'll have a very, very distinct NPC for sure. Break the spelling on that. Don't know. Personal bugbear of mine is that I really don't like lists where you end the list item with a period. So most of these are not sentences. But we would definitely end up with something that was very, very mine so I can mess with it however I want. Or my copy of it, anyways. Unfortunately, it doesn't. I don't think it says anywhere who the original person who made it is. I'm sure I could find that out by looking at Reddit, but I'd have to go find that out on Reddit. And that's not as important right now. So I think that there's stuff we can add in here. Oh, so this one has, and in addition to, so these are all facial traits. Okay, I missed that up top. These are all facial features. Which I think for me, this is way too much. Like if I'm making, this would be cool if I was making maybe a video game and I really needed to, I really wanted to make a bunch of distinct kind of characters, or try to give me an idea of like a whole bunch of stuff I wanted to throw together for a character creator. But for a TTRPG setting, I think having an NPC with this many descriptive features on it is going to muddy the waters a lot. So I don't think, I'd rather have one thing. It's one of those situations where it's, if everything's special, nothing's special, it'll get lost in the sauce. It'll be like, oh, that was the guy who had these eyes, but was that the guy with the cleft chin, or was that the guy with the square jaw? Because you might have multiple people who have a button nose, for example. So I like this stuff, but it is using it all together like it seems like it's being presented here, I would say would be drastically overkill. Now, if you were somebody who was interested in making art of these characters, sure, yeah, go for it. That'd be really cool. This would be extremely helpful. But for just saying who a character is, theater of the mind, not that. Though I do like the jewelry one. We might grab this. Jewelry is definitely one that I struggle with. Maybe it's because I don't wear enough jewelry myself. Any jewelry. Oh, so they have a D100 calm trait. Then they're going to have like a non-calm trait, I assume. A stress trait. That's cool. I kind of like that. And it gives you two things to play off of. And right now their mood is whatever. Now, I do like the emotions. I like that. How do they present themselves when they're calm versus when they are stressed? You know, just for fun, let's roll one. See how that kind of works together. All right, 5173. So they are greedy. And 73. They're scornful. Oh, so they are just not fun to be around. Cool. But this will be very funny. It's like, what if you're rolling this up for somebody who's supposed to be their ally? And be like, why would they want this person? I think it's alright to be money motivated, but then for them to be like scornful of things, that's not going to be an NPC they're going to want to keep around very long. Alright, let's try another one. 10 and 53. So reserved and sarcastic. They're generally pretty quiet, but when things aren't going well, suddenly they get kind of snippy and sarcastic about stuff. This isn't about me. Get out of here. But I do like this. This is interesting. I don't know how well those two things work together. Maybe if I was running something that wasn't like D&D, something that was a little bit more like I was gonna say Call of Cthulhu, but Call of Cthulhu tracks madness, not really stress, though you might be able to put or sanity, but you might be able to trade that in for sanity but I think that this would work a lot better for any sort of, if you're running a TTRPG that had a stress management aspect to it. I could see that. In fact, I think that like this D100 emotions and attitude chart would be probably better for rolling up PCs rather than NPCs, because NPCs shouldn't have this much limelight most of the time. There's stuff I like here. The mood is fine. I don't find this useful because their mood's should like an actual person change pretty regularly. So maybe on a one-off where it's like, oh, what are the very similar to over here. Very similar to my what should I put in here? Their preoccupation, like what are they doing? It's a little bit similar. I think I like this better. I like this preoccupation better because I think I talked about this last time. It makes me think a little bit like watching Law and Order. Like rarely is there some sort of like interview or interrogation. Well, I mean interrogation is different. Interview scene where they're going to get clues or talk to somebody where they're just standing around having a conversation. Like that person's always busy doing something, or the detectives are always interrupting them while they're doing something. I think it's really, I like to have this a little bit more than just whatever their mood is, because I think what they're doing is probably going to create a lot of their mood, especially when they're getting interrupted. Again, are they arguing? Are they making food or preparing food or eating food or cleaning up afterwards? Are they handy? Are they like repairing stuff, working on things with their hands, that kind of stuff? The hygiene, are they taking a shower, using the bathroom, brushing their teeth, that kind of stuff? Leisure, are they doing something for fun? Are they gambling down in the gambling hall or having a drink in the tavern? Depending on what they're doing here, they might be a little bit more accommodating to having some conversation. Rest, are they sleeping or relaxing in some other sort of way? Studying about something, they're chatting with people, doing their job, work, or doing some sort of form of worship. I think I like this a little better. I can definitely see using the other one. So is there anything that we want to pull out of here? I do like the emotions and attitude. So I'm going to pull this emotions and attitude. I'm going to pull this because I think this is interesting. I don't know if it'll make the final cut, but it's made the first pass, I think. Something that's like, I really want to sit down and maybe try to make some NPCs with and try to figure out how I might use that in the game. I'm going to pull this in here and drop it down. This page. Combat actions, we got a bunch of different stuff down in here. So let's take it to here. Can't do it with right click. Insert, break. We're gonna make a page break here, and we're gonna drop this down here. This can be columns. Get everything. Yeah, they'll get everything. Okay. There we go. Okay. I like that. Okay, so that one's gonna make the pass. I want to see up here. Go back up here. Up. Like I said, some of the stuff we have on here multiple times, like I've got different things for the age and stuff like that. We'll collate that and mash it all together and we can come up with. But for right now, I'm just trying to get stuff, kind of all this working stuff in one area, and then we'll move on from there. So yeah, here's the notable jewelry or clothes. Like I kind of want to add some more to that, which was really good in here. I selected that. Let's close. I'm just gonna pull this. Can be messed with later. Doesn't have to be perfect. I like the close one. Which is also in the same area. I thought that was fun. We have a type of tattoo. I'm not sure that I would use this, but yeah, I don't think I would use this. No. Can't imagine I would. Like, a tattoo's gonna come up pretty often, I feel like. It'd be weird if here's what their one-off tattoo is, unless it's tied to some sort of organization they're in or has some other kind of meaning, which would be the real purpose of noting a tattoo or distinguishing feature like that. It'd be like, oh, but that is a thing. It does make me think of like that Witcher 3 and seeing all the sailors with tattoos. Knowing that, like, in the like maritime history, that all the tattoos generally mean something. It's sort of like your sailor resume in a lot of ways. Be like, oh, look, I went to this place and I did this thing and I've crossed the tropics and all that kind of stuff. Those are very interesting. I'm not sure I need the detail on the scars or their hands. They have a heavy touch, light touch. These are good. I like it. Light touch or heavy touch. It might be a little overlap with clumsy or delicate, which I think are already stuff that I've got down in here. Got like clumsy and delicate and stuff like that already in here. Maybe I don't. I did though. You know, I keep forgetting. You could just look for it. Yeah, graceful or clumsy. Yeah, I'd say that's almost more of a quirk. Graceful or charming and be light touch is pretty graceful. I would assume that clumsy is kind of heavy-handed. Quite the same, but I think close enough for what we're looking at. Some of these are pretty interesting, but I don't think it makes sense to translate over. Because basically all that stuff would go under here. It literally would all go under notable feature. We are bulking. Should we go ahead and throw it in? I don't know. In fact, I might be pulled directly from this. Got chin and hand on it as well. I may have actually just straight from it. That matches up. It doesn't have ears on it though. But yeah, it's got pretty much the rest of it. Had ears on there. Oh no, I did. Yeah, that's pretty much pulled straight. That's I think with something like that, really all I'm going to want to do at some point be like, is that when it becomes a notable feature, is it notable because it's pleasing? Is it notable because it's weird? Is it notable because it is not pleasing? It is unsettling. No, unsettling is not. I guess just not pleasing. Because I was thinking, oh, well, maybe if they had like a weak chin or something like that. You're like, but that's not really repulsive. What it is. But it's certainly not what we would call traditionally attractive. I think we're gonna let that lie. I think we are good here. Let's check the check. 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 Moving on. So now we've jumped back into a thing that is my ramblings. This must be very old, though. Feels very, very old. From the way things are laid out. Very interesting. Man, this is in depth on that. All of this should be the same names, though, so we can probably rid of, yeah, Zobrist. We can get rid of all of that. All of that is already got that accounted for. Including, I think we did the, yeah, I think we definitely looked at the Final Fantasy Tactics name generator last time. I don't know if we saved it because it is very, it's kind of like the Ogre Battle one. They really just kind of like pick a language and then just was like, oh, that's what this is. And the place name generator doesn't really be here at all. Yeah, we didn't do cast, but that's very closely tied to occupation. So I think in fantasy games, or most fantasy settings, there's some crossover. Very interesting to put farmer under middle class. How old this is. I think most people would consider that like lower class rather than middle class. But in this context, farmer is supposed to mean like a yeoman. So it's somebody who generally owns their own home and their own steading. And make them not like a peasant or a servant or a slave. So a farmer in a lot of ways is also unskilled labor. An unskilled laborer would be generally somebody who's in the city doing stuff. Hauling water. Being like a dong farmer or something like that, doing those kind of things. Digging ditches. Parents would say. Okay. Alright. I think most of this stuff's gonna be in our stuff already. This. I really hate that they took out the vehicle stuff. 2024. I really did enjoy having that in 5e. Point I'm still gonna play with it. Like a lot of that 2024 changes. Like some of it I'm using, some of it I'm not using. Doesn't make that much sense. But I think we've got. This because this is gonna have that chart in there because I think 50. Oh no, I didn't. It's just straight up that, isn't it? That was a nice little piece of design work, 5e. It goes very, very unnoticed probably. But if you add all the skills and proficiencies together, And well, actually, that's not true because I changed some stuff. Never mind. I designed it that way. Because I think we'll find out right in here where I did it, because it was a little shy, I think. So I split up some of the games because I was like, there's not a board game proficiency, but there were definitely board games around. Board games are quite old, and I wouldn't consider them necessarily dice games like Nyman Morris, stuff like that. Like those aren't the Hare and Dog. No, it's called Hare and Hounds, stuff like that, where they are board games, but they don't use dice. They are a strategy game, like what do you call chess? But dice games are their own things, or like board games also like that would be like Ankala, like that, or playing cards. So I split things up a little bit more, as well as splitting up all the instruments instead into groups rather than it just being like same way that vehicles are for land vehicles or water vehicles. Yet there is no like horsemanship or riding skill. It's all animal handling for some reason. But splitting it up and be like, oh, as anybody who plays instruments can probably tell you, hey, you have learned a wind instrument, you're going to have a much better chance of being able to pick up a different wind instrument and at least make it make a somewhat pleasing sound compared to somebody who does not have proficiency in any of those. Same thing with like string instruments. Like, yeah, there's a big difference between a lute or like a viol or something like that, but they all use the same scale. They all kind of have the same fingering. It's just learning what the strings are and the positioning on the fretboard. And what you do with the other hand, whether that's a bow or plucking. Same thing with percussion. Drum's kind of a drum, kind of a drum. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance there, but it is a drum. Same thing there. So I added those in to bump us just all the way up to 50. So I could do a nice roll with it. Yeah, so I think we'll probably have some stuff we can pull out of here. Most of this is probably well represented. There's a lot of stuff up here at the top. Okay, I guess we'll just go down from the top. All right, so we had, see, this is how old it is. We're not even calling it ancestry and heritage anymore. And I mean, this is probably quite old. It's probably over a decade old. All right, so we have the physicals down pretty easily. Yeah, I don't think I have anything that talks about their hair / facial hair. I don't know if that's particularly important, but it is interesting. So some of these are going to be kind of... We could add some of this stuff in. That's definitely something that I was going to work on in this document, and it's very old, and I never came back to it. So we have hair color, which for some reason I had down as a 6. I guess that makes sense. Yeah. Looking at it now, I understand why. Like, yeah. Black hair is pretty much the dominant. Obviously, this is very human coded. Brown, and then huge amount of people typically have blonde or red hair. Whereas I did not do that same sort of spread for eye color, which is very interesting. Brown is by far the dominant eye color. Okay, yeah, let's... So I want to add that. I think these are going to be interesting. Does every NPC need this? Absolutely not. Again, this is really only like maybe what sets them apart sometimes could be this. But it does feel like something that could be under their physical description. Could be somewhat notable. Interrupt this here, I think. And I'm not gonna have anything for here, but that's fine. But physical description, definitely go under here. Distinguishing feature. Before distinguishing feature, be like hair, facial hair. I guess color. I think we're getting way too in the weeds if we start talking about shape. Alright. I like that. It's a nice fun thing to make it stand out if you want to. Again, I'm not sure if that would be as useful, especially in the current setting that I have, where everything in the world, all these people are very much kind of tied to somewhat real world ethnicities. Not really, but a little bit. So because of that, I mean, you're often probably not going to be rolling for things like hair and eye color because it's probably going to be pretty obvious for the most part. But I could do it and then have it be, then it kind of becomes a distinguishing feature in and of itself. So, I don't know. Like if you can think about games, not that you've run, but that you've played in, how many NPCs do you remember their eye color of? And of the NPCs you remember their eye color of, how many of them had a weird eye color? And it wasn't just like, oh, they had hazel eyes or whatever. I'm gonna guess that it's not a lot. We have this full daily routine in there. By no means particularly important. Sunrise, morning, midday, afternoon, sunset, evening. Night, late night. I think I like this better than this. Because this still leaves time in between. There's a lot of time between midnight and dawn. That's, depending on where you are, that could be like 6 to 8 hours. Or 5 to 8 hours, let's put it that way. I think I like this better. I'll just put this in there. Do it this way. Delete, delete, delete. Don't worry, it's not like all these documents still exist. I just copied all their stuff and threw them in the tab. So if we ever need to go back and find them, you can always go back. Get it all in one though. Yeah, so we'll put it down here. Like schedule. Obviously, for a lot of what I was working on this document, I'm taking a lot of inspiration from video games where it's very important to kind of know, especially as a developer and even as a player, sometimes what an NPC's routine or schedule kind of looks like. In a TTRPG, probably not nearly as important, actually. Because the thing is like, is finding where that person is interesting or not? Usually not. But it is nice in, I'm thinking, in a video game when it feels like, oh, I don't always have to go to that one specific spot the NPC always stands at. That they kind of move around and do stuff. Like I've talked about it before, but I just finished Kingdom Come Deliverance just that not that long ago, and that was very nice to be like. But also they have like quest markers on them, so you can find them, unless you're playing in ultra hardcore mode where they don't do that, which I don't. I don't have time for that. I don't care what the NPC schedule is. I like that I don't have to go to one place to find them. I can sometimes find them faffing about in the tavern as opposed to being at their stall or at their home. Like, I like that they move around or they're walking in the street between those places. Like, I like that. But it's not technically important that I know that. Alright, we've got all this stuff. Oh, yeah. I can doing Hawkman. Yeah, very, very important. Yeah, it's very old. And we've done this. Yeah, it's pretty much untouched there. Interesting. So yeah, we don't have cast. And that could be a useful thing, but generally their occupation will tell you that. Like I said, there's a little bit, because it's fantasy games usually, there's usually a little bit of overlap where you can have a noble who is also a merchant. Whereas traditionally, like kind of realistically, that's not really the case. You are noble because you own land. You are a landowner. That is you. You have people for that. But also you have very penniless, especially in the later medieval Renaissance times, you have kind of penniless nobility who don't have a lot of money, and then they end up marrying into merchant families. Like, get that family titled. They exchange their title basically for money. Very interesting. But I'm not sure I care that much about. That's the sort of stuff that is easy for me because I know that stuff. I don't really need it written down. Yeah. Rural, urban, Outlander. I think those work. Because you could have a foreign rural person. Outlander in this context is going to be like somebody who's from the wilds. Or a barbarian kind of thing. So you can have a local Outlander. You can have somebody who like is maybe like an outlaw or is raised by outlaws or raised by wolves, that kind of thing, like a Mowgli kind of situation. And they don't technically, they could still be local. They could still be pretty close to wherever you are. Because wilds are close to somewhere. Okay. Go. I think we're good on these. Yeah, hold on. I think this was also, yeah, I think that was supposed to be like that. I think I screwed up the formatting on that. Which is true because I don't think there's any criminal on there. So let's add criminal. Criminal's a good one to add on there. Which may or not be their job or occupation. Because I don't know, I'm just gonna be like, question mark? How do I get that in there? Or I guess I should put like, where are they from? Past. Really what I should be putting in there. I'm gonna put that after job though. Even though, like when you're looking at the features and proficiencies as far as like D&D is concerned, being a noble is that thing. That is the job. That is the occupation. But you can have gas, which would be criminal, low. And I guess I could put religious in there as well, just because religious is very specifically how religion works in my game, which is very, very important to the game. In a lot of D&D settings or a lot of D&D games, whether it's a home setting or a published setting, religion is just blanket not very important. In my setting, it is very important, but it is also very Christian church modeled around that, mainly because trying to make a model of a religion that works on that kind of scale without borrowing from something that already exists would be such a massive undertaking that I would not do it. I did like it because it was something that makes the setting very distinct, how important it is, how people treat it in the game. Like, I know I talked about it in the last session I ran of my game. We have a cleric in the party, and the cleric and the fighter, where they got like 3 levels of exhaustion. They're slogging it through this salt marsh, wetlands, coastal marsh, back to the island, back to their friends. And they see a campfire. And they gotta talk to these people. These people are very clearly pirates, but because religion is very important in the game, like they are very accommodating because they're like, I mean, you can't kill man of the cloth or do stuff to the man of the cloth. Like that's like your immortal soul, man. Like that's heat. That's smoke. I don't want to mess with. I don't want to like, just give him some food and let's get him gone. We don't want to strike down this person if we don't have to. I have to mess with this guy. Okay, so location class, we got those. Royal and Noble, Merchant Artisan, yeah. Alright, so we hit all those. So I must have made this like right after, probably during 2014. Probably when I made it. If I have 5e stuff in here. Or that was later edition. And you get 1 feature and the 2 skills tools. We got all that already. This is good. Should we do something like... No, I think we're good where we are. Location, urban, rural, foreign. Which just means they're just from far away. So we're kind of changing that a little bit. So you can have a rural foreigner. I think is a... I know it's 2 roles instead of 1, but... Unless I made it 1 big chart. I'm going to make it 1 big table. And not that important. I'll think about it. This is the same thing. Yeah. Are they local? Are they from the same sort of area? Are they a countryman? Are they a foreigner? Are they an outlander? That's not... I don't hate that still. That is still pretty close to what we have. Like, where are they from? Are they local? Are they nearby? Are they foreigner? I think this is broken down. The other table's broken down by the way that I do my hex mapping. So, local, county, regional, might be an atlas hex. I don't know. No, I'm good. These are good. These can go away. This is like their proficiency level, which is cool. I would have to look up. I mean, I would have to look up. We can look up. What are the proficiency? Actual proficiency. Pick a class, doesn't matter. Proficiency bonus. Alright, it goes up to 6. 2, 3, 4. I guess it makes sense, like, if you have somebody who's like that neophyte level, which I think feels like is very comparable to... maybe not. Sorry, I'm doing math in my head, thinking about the proficiency bonuses and how I'm gonna work. If it's worth messing with it with expertise, because obviously this goes 1 through 5 proficiency. 6, I probably lowered this because we're journeyman is kind of where I kind of assume that PCs are as far as their like basic proficiency of the +2. We have that down as apprentice here. I guess that makes sense. So neophyte would be like somebody who's brand new, like learned a little bit, but is very much like an amateur. Apprentice is like somebody who's still really learning at journeyman being, okay, I know what I'm doing. I can do it on my own. Master, they're able to create a masterwork, exemplar, or a grandmaster. But then you have the PCs that can go to 6. I don't feel like I need this. Maybe something with expertise. I don't know. That's pretty down in the weeds. Yeah, it's okay. I'll add it down here. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna put this here. And then I'm gonna do it by like local. So local, county, region, atlas, and even throw in goat would be fun. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's pretty much atlas, but fine. County level will get a +3. That'll be their proficiency. 4, 5. Goat. You know what? I'm just gonna take goat out. I'm just being silly. Because they might still have expertise, which I'm more likely to give them if you're going to a specific crafts person. So that way, even like a local level, which is like, oh, the village blacksmith, and be like, but still like the PC, a PC is generally not as good, low level PC, not as good at smithing as the person who does that every day as their job. Because they will have expertise in that, unless I'm splitting them between that proficiency, and then maybe I give them medicine because they're like a farrier as well, or something like that. So they've got both those, or animal handling. Maybe they work at delivery or something like that. I can swap it around and be like, they're kind of, are they multifaceted? Do they do multiple things? Or do they focus on one thing? That way, by the time they get up, PC should be under somebody who probably does kind of like is an expert who specializes in one thing. If you want to go to the mage tower person in the mage tower is probably expertise kind of person. You're gonna be like that sage. They're like, great, they're gonna have a +4 at the local level. Then if you get all the way up to Atlas level, you're talking to one of the most learned people in the world and beyond. It's kind of an Elminster kind of person that you're talking to. And so they're easily going to have like the +10 plus their intelligence to, they're looking at having like a +15, whatever Arcana rolls they're doing and stuff like that. I think that will work out well. This is all the same. I think this could probably change. The only issue I have about doing the height as a 2d6 roll is it means that the vast majority of times that I'm going to roll for NPCs are all going to be the same height. They're also going to be average height. And is that as important as having some variability? I don't know. And being notably taller or short. I don't know. I'll leave it for 2d6 right now. And this we're going to be very short. Short. Average. Tall. Very tall. Bada bing, bada boom, done. Usually that's like 12. Okay, I might move this out a little bit. I've been trying to do that a little bit. I used to do only 3 and 4 here, but I think it's 5, so that means it's only right. I think that's kind of the best of both worlds for me. I like it. Alright, so we have location. We don't have relations yet, I think. So maybe that's a nice breakdown of a distinguishing feature: ability, mental, a physical, mannerism, a desire, a fear, or or sort of physical features and mannerisms, something they want, and that's the thing that makes them notable. Whether that is they collect things, or they want a very specific thing, or they won't be quiet about, they have a fixation on something, or that's Jill. She works in the bakehouse and she's afraid of sheep. Apparently one bit her when she was really small, and now she doesn't want to go buy sheep. Yes, doesn't always have to be an irrational kind of fear. It is fun to be like, oh yeah, you don't get her around, it'll be fine. Or they have some sort of interesting relation. I'm pretty sure it's probably in here. Okay, so we had this locked in pretty well. 2, 3, 7. The last one. Oh, I went high or low ability. Okay. These are neat, so I'm gonna grab them. I know I have it as a D10. That is clearly a D8 table. Alright. Changes later. But I like this, so I'm gonna take this for now because I think we might be useful to have it have a breakdown. Again, anytime that we're placing one roll with 2 rolls, we want to make sure that we're really getting our bang for our buck when we're doing that. We are adding an extra step, and every step we add makes it take more time. But we don't necessarily have to roll on that one if we wanted to be like, oh, we rolled something and we said we rolled ability. Or in this case, it would be like high ability. Whatever makes sense for them. If they are the smith, it's probably strength. They're known for being quite strong. The strongest person in town is the guy who works. Okay. We're just going to add these in here again. It's fine, I know. It's going to be a mess. I'll go back and clean it up later. But it gets us moving. Trying to together. Where was he born? Who was his parents? Before he became an adventurer. These are PC questions. I have changed how I use some of these questions. A number of that framework, a big chunk of that framework, I should say, comes from How to Be a Great GM. You know, rest in PCs. For the channel, indeed. Guy's fine as far as I know. I'm sorry, it's his channel that he's kind of moved on from. YouTube channel. Trying to figure out, here's some questions to ask about your own when you're making a new player character. That kind of helps you get into their mindset. Where were they born? Who are their parents? Did they have parents or siblings or family that's still alive or friends? What were they doing before X, before becoming an adventurer? What is the thing that made them an adventurer? What were they doing beforehand? That's whatever their background is usually. Would they leave their previous life? Would they leave behind when they decided to become an adventurer? How do they feel about that? And what do they want? The goal and motivation. So my questions have changed a little bit from this. But, you know, no, it was 12 years ago, probably, is when I probably made this. So what is very similar? It's just they're worded a little bit differently to, like, you know, what do they want? So in goal and motivations, I've changed it to be like, what are they running to or running from? Which generally is kind of what was X? What was the thing that kind of set them off? So that might be the thing that's like, oh, now I need to switch tactics to go get something, or because I had to leave that all behind because this thing happened. That watershed event, whatever it is. So those, not important for our NPCs. I mean, if I really wanted to make like a sidekick character, maybe. Like a really involved sidekick character. But I don't want to pull focus from my PCs. So I wouldn't do that. Mission, location, appearance, we've got all this stuff. All the same. I have all already. We can do. I'll put it in there. This really shouldn't be a D6 table, though. Like I said, especially for how I work in. This is like an actual, apparently, skin tone classification system used in the real world. But most of that is very heavily determined by whether the PC is from the area that they're supposed to be in. Like if they're a local, in the area that I'm running right now has a very early in here, so I'd probably throw it into what I would guess would be between currently within these two. Yeah, probably mostly this one. Yeah, Mediterranean. They're in a somewhat Middle Eastern kind of Mediterranean area, and so most people are going to be moderate brown. Not a super helpful description sometimes. So, but they did come across a foreigner who showed up for the festival, and that person had more like full-on Northern European white. So they stuck out in the crowd because they were like one of the only people who looked like that. Even though it is a port town, so you do have a little bit of leeway. Oh, not what I meant to do. And these somewhat, very loosely are kind of based on latitude. Not totally, but somewhat. So high latitudes, lower latitudes. Again, it's very loose association. Not one for sure. I'll put it down here. And it doesn't seem like a thing that I would use. Again, if I was making a table for just like random NPCs, sure, maybe. And just because of your friend. Because this would be a thing that I would want to change. Obviously, it's very based off of real human skin tone, where you either have a lot of red skin or a lot of yellow, or really kind of the lack of red in the skin. And so if that's the case, it'd be like, okay, if I was going to switch this for like orcs, what would that look like together? Like I might change this to be like green versus gray, because D&D orcs, surprise if you don't know this, because you might not. D&D orcs are gray, they're not green traditionally. That is a World of Warcraft special, primarily. I mean, there are other things, but primarily a World of Warcraft special. So I might change that between like, oh, maybe they have green or gray hues to kind of differentiate. Oh, now instead of just having them be dark green or light green, you can kind of have that lateral shift as well. Again, if I was going to use it. Probably not going to use it this way. But I'd rather have it and not use it than decide that I want to use it for whatever reason and not have it. These are the same thing I'm already using. Same thing I'm already using. I just have changed the naming for it to string bean. I like that. Height, we've changed. I don't think we have on there. I'd probably make this. And again, I'd probably make this like just for fun. Even though this kind of falls under distinguishing feature. So I'd drop. Can't use an actual list because we start at 2. Kind of like destitute. Five. Haggard. I would probably might change. Yeah, we can go fashionable. Maybe I should do fine. Maybe fine would be better. Because fine could also mean just high quality. I like better. This is also talking about potentially like armor and stuff like that. And 12 would be. So I like the idea that maybe you have somebody who has a sword, and it's very clear that that sword is a fashion accessory, like it's not maybe as functional as it needs to be. That's fun. I'm gonna throw it in here. Will I use it? I don't know. Maybe not. Like this Moribito soundtrack is much quieter. Full screen. Okay, doke. This is very similar to what we and what I really want is this notable relationship. I'm going to take all this, and then I could always grab it, and we're going to chop all this stuff up later. By the way, if you haven't watched Moribito, you should go watch it. Quite good. I don't think it's very popular anime, but it's quite good. Called a spear-wielding bodyguard. Turned into a bodyguard. Take this table. That's gonna be good. Like that. I actually kind of like all this stuff, so I think I'm just going to pull all of this because I think there's a lot of useful stuff that's in here. Some of it's a large portion of it's going to be really duplicated, but I think a lot of mess around with. I do like the hidden talent one. Fun thing to throw in there. But also to give us a little more kind of stuff. Leprosy. Seizures. I'm gonna grab all of this because this was all quite good. Yeah, we're just gonna grab all this. Some of this is going to be a little redundant, like having caste and occupation side by side will make a lot of this particular table redundant. That's okay, because you don't want to end up with like, oh, I rolled a peasant, but when I rolled for like occupation or something, I got like noble. I mean, we can make that up. We could be like, oh, they're a penniless noble who's kind of living on the streets. But we do have to do a little bit of work. But it does give us a slightly more interesting character to maybe think of. We think about a well, what would we get if we end up with like Fisher for the occupation? No, we already did like a high and low. So what if it was flop that around? So what if they something like a landowner, but then as far as their caste was, I mean, we could do a peasant. That's just a yeoman. Somebody of the class who owns their own stuff would probably be a yeoman, even though we've got that listed middle class here. Maybe they just came into it, or maybe they've come into it through inheritance or some other, maybe less than legal means. Or it could be like a Manifest Destiny situation where they're like, oh, you know, the kingdom's given out free land for people to claim. All they have to do is go out there and settle it. It's a, you know, the Romans did things kind of like that. Not exactly, but kind of like that. Mostly it was for people who agreed to find the legions. Okay. So, we're going to drop all that stuff in. I know we're just adding a glut. That's okay. Check. Checky check. I think this we got to put it down at the bottom because we got so much stuff. Up, up. Now let's insert actually a freaking page. I think we're good to continue with 2 columns. And even be able to do this. It's fine. Fine, I promise. Alright, so we're going to talk a little bit about the more published NPC generators. So, stuff that I do have. I think everything that I came up with is we do have full digital versions of everything. So we should be good to go there. And I'm about in need of a refill. Here's what we're going to do. We'll do the Lazy DM Companion. We'll pull that stuff there. And once we're done with that, I'm going to take a break to go get stuff. Get a refill on my coffee. A refill on my coffee. Lazy DM. Let's do the Lazy. Wait, is the name of that changed? Hold on. This is weirding me out. I do believe this is the right book that I'm looking at, but under the Lazy DM workbook. No, this isn't the right one. Oh, that's right, that's right. I always get this wrong. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Here, I will show you. I'm gonna go ahead and make this. You guys look at this while I grab the other stuff. So this is. Go. This one. These DMs work quick. What I always forget is that Lazy DM's companion. I know. One of the problems is when the art on the books, the books are very similarly named, and the art on the books are also very similar. This is obviously a Dungeon Master setup, so you can't see this one. It also seems to be some alchemical desk situation. But I always forget that this is like the one Lazy DM thing that I don't have a digital copy of for some reason. Which seems weird. I feel like I've got to have it somewhere. Couldn't tell you where it was. Couldn't tell you. Alright, that's okay. So I don't think this is going to have anything for us. I don't think we need anything in here. You guys back. Well, I apologize. I'm gonna have to look in this. There is stuff in here. Like I said, it's not all the sources of stuff I have. I have so much stuff. The stuff that I go to regularly or is notable that I think might have stuff that would be interesting for us, or I know just from my personal experience with the publishers or whatever stuff that is, whether I know I'm going to like the stuff that's in it. Okay. Usually a good one. I tend to like most of his stuff. And quick tricks. Players, strong starts. NPC generator, there it is, page 20. Very nice little, like, this is a super helpful little booklet for running D&D and other RPGs. It's like, hey, how to make some tables for like how to throw a quest together really quickly and stuff like that, and running hordes and monster templates and changing some stuff. Zone-based combat, environment locations, spiral campaigns. But we have the NPC generator and the villain generator. First thing it does is gives you a list of names. That's fine, I don't need that. Gives us a table of ancestries. We've pretty much got that covered. Like I said, that's going to be, I have a universal table, then I tend to make one based off of whatever location that we're in. Luckily enough, I'm only drilling down as specific as the Atlas hex. So everything within whatever Atlas hex they're in, which will, in most cases, is generally the entire campaign, unless they go really far afield. Really just one per campaign that I usually need to make. And also making another table is not difficult. I just have to go look at a spreadsheet to do it. Worldview. The NPC's worldview can help determine how they initially react to the characters, just by how the characters approach them. Improvised DCs for social interaction ability checks based on the approach, with checks usually ranging between DC 10, easy, and DC 20, very hard. A default of DC 12 is usually a good choice. I'd even say 12 is a little low. I think 13's maybe a better choice, but yeah, that's assuming that you don't have any charisma characters. Almost certainly you do. Alright, so we've got a few in here. And this is very much just, I think we always have to do this there. Clear formatting. Strike through. You can go ahead and strike that through right now. So these stuff that's on this table is very similar to Where is it? Kind of down here, these types of distinguishing feature, or a little bit like their personality. It's just a list of stuff. Surly, friendly, brash, elitist, suspicious, carefree, loyal, opportunistic, wide-eyed, humorous, cautious, roisterous, optimistic, ignorant, selfless, brazen. Brazen and brash can be kind of close to each other. Not exactly the same. Loving, ambitious, greedy, or outgoing. It's a good list. I like it. I don't know if it does anything too different from what we have, but you know what? Just run down. Pull out my side. Okay. Only problem about having soft cover book, they don't like to lay flat. I'm just gonna drop these in here because they don't seem to be in any sort of rhyme or reason. That's how I know it is an iron sworn table, because those iron sworn tables drive me crazy because they are not in alphabetical order. Just because they could have been, and then they just decided not to do that. Always bugs me. I don't know why, but it does. Clearly, trash. You just carefree, loyal, mystic. Just mystic, optimized. Ignorant. Helpless. Living. Just nice. Like I said, there's some of this, like the outgoing, that'll be very overlapping with the way that I tend to personalities now. Now I have those 12 personalities where half of them tend to be more outgoing people. Reticent or shy or whatever we call it. Half of them like to talk and half of them don't. There's a profession table down here. And then there's really only one other thing in there, in that appearance and manners. Wild hair, scarred cheek, body tattoos, smokes a pipe. Gold teeth, walks with a limp, dashing clothes, picks teeth. Some of them are mannerisms, some of them are physical descriptors. None of these are. And it's very funny. So one of the ones in here is shifty eyes. I'm like, but what if you have somebody who is like, their worldview is wide-eyed, so they just look shifty, but they aren't. Get that sort of resting bitch face kind of energy to it. Like, the way that I present myself is not how I actually feel on the inside. A half-shaved head. Okay. Like, a half-shaved head. Like, that half or like that half? like a thinking like a Imperial Q, Chinese Q, or maybe it's like the Viking haircut where you have like where you have the forelock and then the back shaved. I think Slavs have a traditional hairstyle like that as well, like Cossacks as well. And interesting. So nothing out of there, I think, is worth pulling over. Except for maybe Smokes a Pipe. I like that because I don't know if I have anything quite like that. Bad habit or fidget. I'm going to add that in there. I want to put it under narcotics use. Yeah, sure, why not? So narcotics in that will include, I generally include tobacco, which is not technically a narcotic. That's fine. Anything from tobacco to a number of illicit drugs, as well as like alcohol. And that was everything in here. That's all the NPC generator is, just one page. The other page is a villain generator, but I don't think that will be as useful for us. I do like in the villain generator, you get a villain, you get a villainous herald. Heralds often speak for villains before they appear, bringing the villain's threat to the attention of the world. This falls very much in that sort of like deputy lieutenant role that I kind of talked about. This one they have Talking Doll. Or a faithful priest. So not always a deputy, but very often. Get your villainous motivations and then 12 villainous quests. One of the things that I do like about this, because it's the only resource like this that I try to use, not specifically this book, but stuff from Mike Shea with Lazy DM, is because it tends to be quite generic, and that's fine as long as it's the only generic thing I can use, then I can like stamp off of it. But like these quests are super generic. Destroy a shrine, recover an ancient artifact, corrupt the local lords, destroy the local kingdoms, fire up ancient machines, form dark alliances, open otherworldly portals, build invincible armies, kill former or would-be heroes. Like they're all like really strong trope-ish quests. Like they're all really good. Like, but you do kind of want to grab. There's only 12 of them, so it's like you can't keep going back to that well all the time. Not without grabbing something here and then doing some detail work for yourself. Especially because the motivations in the quest might not necessarily line up. Let's look at one. Yearns to create balance. That can be a motivation. And let's say build powerful monuments. I mean, like you're really gonna have to do some legwork. But that should be the only physical one that we have to look at today. Good. So had a little bit out of here. So a lot of these are gonna kind of be like that at this point. We have a lot of stuff already down. So we still got a little bit of time left in our stream. I'm going to take a break. We'll try to get through at least one more. I think up next is Paizo stuff, right? Yeah. The Paizo Game Mastery Guide, which I do know for a fact that I do have a digital version of. I'll pull it up real quick. Give me the Paizos. And I'm going to be looking at the first edition one because that's the one I'm familiar with. So certainly, you're going to have probably a very similar thing in the second edition, or the second edition revised, or wherever we are with Pathfinder right now. As you might guess, I don't play a ton of Pathfinder, especially not Pathfinder 2. All right, I'll take a break. You guys hold on. Be right back. Alright, I'm back. A little longer to heat up the water than I was expecting. And then my dog keeps wanting me to play with him. Can't do that right. Alright. So, I have got Paizo Game Mastery Guide pulled up. I'm gonna go ahead and throw you guys that one. Other than, I need to look at it. Yep. These non-player characters. Again, like I said, if you're... By the way, just in general, the Paizo Game Mastery Guide, got the little copy up there, shelf, is considered one of the better DMGs, Dungeon Master Guides. I know it's for a different system, but as general good level advice for whatever kind of game you're running. Really useful. I assume the second edition ones. That one, it's, I think, the one book from second edition I don't have, because I am not interested, unfortunately, in running Pathfinder second edition. But it should have really good stuff in it, and I'm going to assume it has very similar stuff. Also, you can tell already, it's got a lot to say about NPCs. Alright, provide the Legion of NPCs enables him to weave the tale he has. This chapter delves into the world of non-player characters, from designing the types of characters GM might want to include in the storytelling. Those rural personalities memorable. The toolboxes of character creation, and detailing those most important of NPCs, villains. Designing NPCs are a pivotal element in many Pathfinder adventures, especially those in which the NPCs must deal with crucial non-combat situations or act in a area. Yeah, it gives you like advice on like how to inhabit them and play act as them. Super good. Really nice to have that stuff. Designing NPCs thus becomes an exercise of creativity, which the GM can cultivate by reading fantasy literature or watching fantasy on the screen. Fantastic. Chapter 14 of the Pathfinder RPG core rulebook addresses the creation of NPCs from a rule standpoint, what one might consider the science of NPC. You know what? I can pick that up. One moment. See the nuts and bolts, but I think most of that's dealing with like the actual mechanic aspect, which is not the thing that I'm concerned. In my general idea around NPCs is like, if your player characters are attacking them, something has probably gone wrong. Unless it's, you know, like a villain, like you assume that they are going to fight them. But otherwise, that would be weird. It would be like, I have screwed something up. Or my players are out of control. Two things can be true at once. Under 14, creating NPCs. For book, Pathfinder 1. Yeah, so this is just going to give us the stat blocks, I think. And spells, and which the Game Master Guide also has stat blocks like this. No worries. Pop, pop, pop. Going. I don't think anything in here is going to be... okay, let's do this. First step in making an NPC is to determine its basic role in your campaign, race, class, and basic concept, ability scores, skills, feats. So yeah, this is very much like they said. This is the science, what they are, as well as how much gear they have. You can tell it's such a third edition derivative kind of product. Not derivative in a bad way. It's like, you need to know what every NPC, how much money they have to spend on gear and kit them out, and it's just like, yeah, that's really not important like 90% of the time. Because when you start looking at this and you're like, okay, what level are they? And I could just rob them? And they're just an NPC? mean, why go adventuring when you could rob people? It's much faster and probably lower risk. But yeah. Oh, shadow. Yeah, alright. So that didn't have anything for it. That's okay. Alright, so this is going to be the science. That was the science. This is going to be the art of me, I assume. Where were we in? Creativity. The science of NPC creation, as this chapter delves into the art of creating NPCs. Yeah, their roles, what do they do? Villain. Most of that's going to be about villain, the donor. A typical character in folk tales, often appearing as a wise and subtly powerful figure, usually limited in their actions. So that's kind of that like sage or helper, but it's the Gandalf, the guy who's like, oh, I'm very powerful, but you know, I can't take care of this because I'm busy. Runs away. That's why you need to go do it, but I am a resource for you. The helper is going to be like an ally or a patron who's going to give it to you. The victim is, yeah, whoever's the direct target of the villain's woe. So NPC basics. Once the GM knows what role his NPC needs to fulfill, the character's details can begin taking shape. You'll notice that none of those are like shopkeeper. Like sometimes when we get really down in the weeds, Dungeon Masters or Game Masters can be like, oh, I need to fill out all these. Every NPC needs to be individual, and be like, most of them are just very much like background art. They're not really important to the scene. You actually don't need to put basically any detail into them. And only once your players start asking about them, might you need to come up with even something like a name or even figuring out what ancestry they might be. Otherwise, you just be like, you go to the shop, you buy the things, don't worry about it. Fine. We don't need to RP every single interaction. I say that. I do a lot of RP, RP in my games of relatively mundane stuff. But when you have those players who are actors and storytellers and explorers and they want to know about the world and things like that, it's helpful to get them to find out that information diegetically and reward the actor with the stuff that they like about the game. Acting in character. So appearance, NPC worth describing. Every NPC worth describing has an appearance. Something that sets the character apart and distinguishes her from the faceless masses as a unique individual. Color of their hair, their age, beauty or ugliness. A detailed description can do much to determine whether an NPC is memorable, but might also suggest... That's a weird looking monkey. Their motivation, what drives them, what do they want, or what's at stake. Yeah, sorry, I'm just kind of reading. Personality, their basic outlook on life, and typically one or two descriptive notes to the purpose are all that's needed. Are they helpful? Are they gullible, cynical, pessimistic, sarcastic, lazy, hot-tempered? That's what I should have written down instead of temper. I should have written hot-tempered. I don't know what I mean by. In recurring NPCs, the GM might create more elaborate and nuanced personalities, or even change a character's attitude slowly over time. Novelists and screenwriters call this character development. I've decided that I want to change their personality. It's character development. Don't worry about it. Few PCs will care if the local smith aspires to move to the big city or if he never has a speaking role, while a major villain with no greater personality has, then heartless and hateful will feel like two-dimensional after the third or fourth meeting. I mean, technically it's Pathfinder, but this is D&D. I mean, how many times do you think that you can put the villains in front of the PCs before they actively try to kill that person? And probably succeed at doing it. I think 3 or 4 is pretty gracious. Unless there's some reason they can't do it. Alignment, ally. That's an interesting one I hadn't really thought about. But that is in the relations. That is in the thing we just added. Do they have an interesting relation? Like, do we care who the NPC's best friend is? Or maybe their romance partner or something like that? Probably not. Their background. Object. Does the NPC possess an object? Some item? That might be an interesting one. I'm not sure that we have just like notable item. I don't think we have that as like a distinguishing feature. I like that. Maybe I'll just add that up here because I don't think we're going to get on it. Item. We could also do distinguishing feature / item. Oh, I realize you're not looking at the same page I'm looking at. I'll just leave it as notable item as subheading. Don't worry about it. We're not. They have quirks. Yep. They have a secret. Yeah, I can add that under notable. They have a secret. I'm sure it's probably in there, but I'm not going to go looking for it right now. And do they have a voice? NPC's voice, accent, tone, choice of words is an invaluable tool. Yeah, I don't know how to formalize that as far as a table is concerned. So one of the things that's down here that maybe I haven't added, yes, I'll do that. Let me, guys. There you go. So one of the things I'm going to add down here, I have like RP notes. Tags. Activation phrase. I think there's another word for it, but I always think of it as activation phrase, which kind of sounds like a Manchurian candidate, but it's really essentially like, oh, what is something when you need to step into that role, a thing that that character says or that you can say that puts you in that mindset or in the way that they speak or their mannerisms very quickly. A lot of people do that with voice actors. Will do that with like accent work, where they're like, oh, I need like an Irish accent, and so they have a phrase, like an activation phrase that they can say in an Irish accent very easily that will kind of swap their mind. They'll like code switch their mind into speaking in that accent very easily, like change how they arrange their tongue and how they pronounce things. That's the thing you could do. I don't know if I ever really do that. I don't think so. That would be something that I would probably add. I think I have that internally. I don't think I have that written down. Is that I definitely have sort of RP notes for something like, lost the dude's name. Charles Rogel, an NPC in my game, which the players haven't seen in a little bit. He might still be around, might not. I haven't decided yet. They just haven't been back to town here in a while. They should be heading back there probably soon, I think. But he has an activation. Like, I know that he's kind of a detective kind of guy. So he has kind of an activation. Like, that's an RP node in my head. It's like, oh, okay, this guy is a real try-hard detective kind of guy. Naming NPCs, yeah, I'd put that under there. Naming NPCs, real names. It kind of gives you the ideas. Real names sounding familiar and open to variations. Good place to start. Cultural names. GM's world or a region of it reproduces a historical culture. That's the way that I tend to do things. Right now, if the place that players are in has a very Iranic descent, so things tend to be pretty Persian name-wise. A touchstone for that. Kennings. Poetic words that express a metaphor. Yeah, that's very good. Knife eater, silver hand, those kind of things. Be thoughtful when granting an NPC a name that obviously doesn't suit the character. That's one of the reasons that I don't like entire section. That basically this entire section down here is one of the reasons I don't like the Xanthar's Guide to Everything, like ancestry-based names. Because a lot of them, like the halflings, will be like, oh, you know, the like Copperpot, and I don't know why I used a Batman character, Copperpot. Like, well, do they deal anything with pots? Are they an orange smith? Do they cook? Do anything that has anything to do with either copper or pots? If the answer is no, you're like, well, then that's not a very good name. Unless it's a surname for them. Be like, oh, well, my family comes from a long line of, you know, cooks or something like that. So they call us copper pots because we cook in copper pots. But when you're just like plucking random names out, that's why I don't like to use those Kenning style names most of the time. Or I make them very, very specific, like one things. I'm trying to think of a good one. I mean, I named so many of my D&D characters like that. It's like I do like 2 or 3 steps removed. Like I played a Kinku named Kiska, which is like the Order of Crows or something like that. It's one of the like typography or typing for living creatures. It's Kiska is somewhere in there related to it. Q-U-I-S-C-A. Kiska. I always pronounced it Kiska. And that was his name. Like, that's super easy. I played a divine soul sorcerer named August. August means, you know, grand and brilliant and golden. Like golden light of the gods. I named him August. Stuff like that. So I will use those names, but generally I do those for my characters and I don't do those for NPCs. Invented names, yeah. Stereotypes. Rely too heavily on stereotypes from well-known characters in fantasy. Yeah, don't recreate characters that already exist. That's not great. And tropes are useful, but use the trope. Don't beat the trope. Is it bad for the good king's advisor to be sly and scheming? Not that bad if she turns out to be the clever, if shady opponent of a greater villain manipulating the throne. So the question is you can use tropes if you do them well, and you don't do them poorly. Monstrous NPCs, okay, I'm not that worried about that at this point. Avoiding NPC overwork. Again, that's why this well regarded as like one of the better DMG style books that's out there. Maybe we should just read this. A lovingly crafted, fully realized NPC can take almost as long to create as a player character. Not in Pathfinder, I don't think. While the players only need to create one character at any time, GM might need to create several NPCs for each adventure. Here are a few tips for GMs to avoid NPC burnout. Efficiency. If an NPC only needs generic townsperson stats, there's no need to calculate every skill point for a given NPC or to roll stats for every soul in the village. Some NPCs, such as the anonymous voice at the back of the crowd shouting "Burn the witch," do not need stats at all. Although rules exist to create every commoner in complete detail, creating full stat blocks should be safe for NPCs who really need a significant level of detail. That's why there's not a ton of NPC stat blocks, especially in D&D 5 and 5.5. They just don't come up that often. Like, sure, I can go grab the noble stat block if I need it. But like I said, generally my emphasis is if they are attacking an NPC that I don't have a specific stat block for, something has gone awry. Either I have screwed something up, or my players have screwed something up, or we both screwed something up, and that's the reason we're here. And then I have to go get that stat block. Go generic. A selection of generic NPC stats might require work at the start of the campaign, but they will be used again and again. Again, the commoner stat block, the noble stat block. Those are the only two that kind of jump out to mind. And of course, there are guard stat blocks and stuff. But you don't really need, it's just like, is this person just a person? Then you just kind of take the 10s across the board, commoner stat block, and you can toss in the background if you want that gives them a feature and maybe like 1 or 2 skills and maybe 1 or 2 tool proficiencies, maybe expertise in one of those things or 2 of those things. And that's all you need, for the most part. If you want to give them an ancestry, you can give them some of the specifics of that ancestry if you want. Now in 5.5, that doesn't change their overall stats, which is both nice but also weird. And now that comes from their background. So yeah, repurpose. Game stats never go bad. If the adventure calls for specific stats and the GM has access to them from another book, past campaigns, published adventures, guidebook, blah, 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 blah. Repurposing those statistics can save a lot of... Reskin. Reskin all the time. Reuse and reskin stuff. Unless you show the stat blocks to your players, they're not gonna know the difference. And you flavor it differently. Like, if I take that noble and stat block and I decide that's a merchant instead, or a, because I'm trying to think of the noble stat block, they have like parry and stuff. 5e stat block does, or the 5.5 does. You're like, oh, well, now this is a dashing swords person. Great, same thing. They do, maybe I'll even throw in, they've got a little vicious mockery or something that they can toss on it. They even toss a little skank on it. That's very easy to do. A word is enough. There's no need to create a detailed life story even for a major recurring NPC. They're never going to ask about it. Don't worry about it. If it comes up, then you can make it up on the spot. Where backstory is important, a few short notes usually provide everything that GM needs. Yes. Really, if you have an NPC that's got like more than 3 bullet points of stuff that's going on with them, if they're not like the major villain or even a recurring maybe patron, or an ally they've been using for levels, probably too much. It's probably too much detail. Sorry, my music went real spooky real quick there for a second. Just change the track. Kind of this wailing, echoing kind of thing going on. Life of an NPC, building connections. Who are their friends and family? Yep. Contacts and traders. This is generally not stuff I write for NPCs, but is a thing that I use for NPCs very, very often. I've referred to it before as kind of that hiccup method where I like, okay, they want to get from point A to point B. What is something that might stop them from getting point A to point B? Oh, well, they need maybe like an introduction from somebody they know because there's ye olde times and people don't deal with strangers a ton. They're really wary of strangers. Because reputation is very important. So being like, oh, if I do something for an NPC and then that NPC can introduce me to that person and kind of vet me as a reference, now I can get the thing that I wanted. And then guess what? You just got like a mini side quest in the middle of your game and you didn't have to do anything for it. Like, oh, they need their caravans a couple days late. Can you go out and find them outside of town? I got rats in the basement, little piddly stuff. There's a, missing kid, that kind of stuff. Very, very easy to kind of throw just like little side quests out there, just as the little kind of things. There's these little hiccups in between like a larger quest design. NPC contacts traders, yeah, that's all the stuff. NPC allies, followers, and hirelings. Yeah, I mean, allies, followers, and hirelings are very old school kind of play. So it's a little interesting to have it included here, even though, I mean, you can get hirelings in Pathfinder. I'm trying to think if I've ever played in a Pathfinder game where we did that. I don't think so. Nothing I can think of off the top of my head. Sorry, dog's barking and stuff in the background. It's about that time. This place around here gets kind of busy. Cars and delivery trucks and stuff. Gonna be losing his mind for a little bit. So we'll probably finish this up and then I'll probably be done because I don't want to listen. I'm sure you don't want to listen to bark, and I don't really want to listen to it bark. So we'll move on there. Dead ends. Death of the NPC leaves the player characters at a dead end, especially if the NPC dies before passing along some information. That's unimportant. That is unimportant for us. Speak with dead. Yeah. What happens when they fail their escort quest? That's dead ends. Who's in control of the non-player character? Sometimes controlled by the GM. I talked about it in campaign that I'm running, that I actually gave one of the NPCs over to one of the other players to run because they were geographically in a different area, so I didn't want them twiddling their thumbs for like half a session not doing anything, so I gave them an NPC that was with the rest of the group to run so they could have something to do, as long with like some bullet points about like, hey, here's some of the information that like this character knows that would come up that you guys would find out. Beyond expectations, occasionally, almost often, a throwaway NPC, one relegated to a limited role when the few expectations from the GM comes to life, captures the attention and interest of the PCs, and grows into a campaign regular. If an NPC starts to assume an importance beyond that planned for in their creation, the GM should not be concerned. Continue to use the stats created for the character, or generic NPC stats if necessary, until the gaming session ends. Then make it a priority to create the required level of detail for the character before the next. Again, this is very Pathfinder specific, but yeah. At that point, for 5e or 5.5, we'd look at translating them from like a stat block into potentially like a sidekick if they want to keep them around for a while. If they're of the appropriate CR to do that for. Unless it was a high level NPC, but most NPCs are relatively low level. So they work really well as sidekicks. NPC traps. Competitive NPCs. Conflict with the PCs about stuff. Overprotectiveness. While players can and should become very attached to their characters, a GM can sometimes become too attached to a particular NPC. Yeah, that happens sometimes. I hope I don't do that. I try not to do that. You're like, oh no, this NPC is really important. Don't you love them how much I love them? Nope, not really? Okay. It starts to get into weird, like, depending on what you're doing, it can get into kind of that weird DMPC territory, which you kind of want to stay away from. Become that show stealer kind of thing. NPC boons down here. Okay, so a lot of this was really great information. Very little of it has stuff that we would translate over into like the roll tables for actually generating characters, or is already covered by stuff that we have. Again, this is, like they said, it's more the art of NPCs and creating them and running them. So, last note will be like those NPC connections, building connections. Most of this is about building connections between the NPCs and the party. But I also like to build NPCs connections to each other. It can be really helpful. So there'll be times where you grab 2 or 3 different NPCs that the party has probably interacted with individually differently. Be like, oh, you see 2 NPCs that you both know separately together, and they seem to have a good relationship. Or maybe they don't have a good relationship. Maybe they don't like each other. And if they don't have a relationship, then you don't show it up. Yeah, okay. I think this is all. Adepts, experts is just like types. Villains are going to be a little bit more complicated than what we get. Okay, good. So I think we're going to. Here. No, I keep throwing this to the wrong thing. There we go. Alright, so we got through the game mastery guide. I've been meaning to work on this in my own time, but hey. That's what happens. I have other stuff I gotta work on, unfortunately. As much as I'd love to sit around and work on D&D stuff all day, sometimes I can't. Sometimes I got other stuff I gotta do. Stuff that I've got to do here in the not too future. So I think we'll probably leave it here. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we can look at really quickly, but I don't think so. I think we've pretty much hit everything that we wanted to hit, or everything that we're going to have the chance to hit. So, down. Hit. There we go. We have a lot of considerations in there. We've added some stuff to our building blocks, but I think we haven't seen a lot of change in the stuff that we're looking at. We had a little bit of stuff that we changed in. We've given ourselves a lot of options. It's mainly what we're doing. So we've got a whole bunch of pages down here. We've got 16 pages. Yeesh. But some of these pages have almost nothing. Or like 1-page stuff. Kind of helpful. And a lot of it's, again, almost essentially the same information over again. But I'm trying to put all the information in one spot, and then we can start cutting away at it and just removing any duplicates and stuff like that. So we've got a few things I want to look down here. I think we can go ahead and strike Ironsworn because I had already pulled all those tables and we already looked at them. So you know what? Let me look at them. I've got the digital version, which you can get for free, by the way. On the Ironsworn website, if you want to take a look at it, you can just get the rulebook for free. Right, it's free, y'all. It's free real estate. But I think we've got pretty much everything here. NPCs in the Ironlands, components of an NPC. Their rank, which is kind of their CR in Ironsworn. Their features, got that stuff. Drives, that's their motivations. And instinct. And yeah, for creatures, that's instinct. For intelligent beings, that's motivation. Which is almost worth noting. I generally consider that we're making roughly humanoid creatures, but maybe not. I mean, I just don't expect that you're going to develop things like an NPC template like this to use with creatures that probably can't talk. I don't know if that's worthwhile. Tactics, we've already got that. We've already added that one in. Quest starter. All NPCs include a quest starter, which can serve as an inspiration for one of your vows. This is where Ironsworn's very different, kind of. Ironsworn kind of assumes purely that only the people you talk to are important. You don't actually, there's no interactions when you're shopping or doing anything like that. You have like a resupply action. Money's not really a thing in Ironsworn, so that's also kind of part of it. So it's like there's no, when you go shopping, there's not like haggling or anything like that. You generally have to, I mean, you make rolls for it. Like a skill kind of roll for it. Now there is a way to add money into it, both in the base one, where where you basically play as a sellsword rather than an ironsworn. I haven't played like that yet. I'm interested in doing it because I think the delve mechanic works with that a little bit more. But I could see when I was reading it, I was like, yeah, this is interesting, but the game is definitely not tooled to work like this. I was like, but with the delve expansion, maybe. Because the delve does give you like some more loot options. Tactics, quest starter, your truth. They include a question for you to answer. This is the opportunity to customize the NPC to your vision of the art. Again, like everybody who is considered an NPC in a game of Ironsworn is pretty much like a named character. Like usually if you're going to a village, you're talking to like the village chief or whoever's in charge. You're not talking to like and the smith and the farmer and the cooper and all these like random NPCs. It's like, nope. You have one person, and because it's very sort of powered by the apocalypse adjacent kind of system, every interaction is a very narrative focused game. So this is like a thing for you to answer about either your player character or about the world as you are exploring. Yeah. You do this as you define your world or discover through play. Truths may represent an absolute fact or merely something the people of your world believe. NPC packs, that's more for managing combat. Formidable, extreme, and epic foes may not be grouped into a pack. Joining forces with NPCs. Yeah, helper NPCs, by the way, very useful in Ironsworn. Playing Ironsworn, you should try to get a helper NPC. One of the games I played, which was really fun, where I basically played like one of the last nobles that was like leaving the old lands, coming to the Iron Lands, and he had with it like his bannermen. Like he has a group of warriors with it. It's not just him. I was like, oh, that's very cool, and that's extremely useful when it comes to combat, where you get to like use their ranking like as kind of like how many there are as the modifier for your role as opposed to your own. Very cool. And then it made sense because when they got hurt in combat and stuff like that, they were less effective because fewer of them. But you could like heal. You could like recruit new people to become bannermen for you. Very fun. Very different style of play. It's very interesting. I should have played that game more. It's just I realized after I got into it, like a few sessions, I was like, oh, the campaign I've set up for myself will take forever to run to actually fulfill, even to get to the place where I'm actually trying to work on it. That was still me trying to learn the Ironsworn rules. I'd be a little bit better at it, I think. If you're fighting along NPCs, you can reduce the rank of your foes. Charged with protecting NPCs, they might be placed in danger. Yeah. That's more how to play. Creating NPCs. There we go. Ironlanders. Common citizen or brute is troublesome. Trained warrior is dangerous. A powerful or veteran warrior is formidable. Broken. Raised eyes, painted skin, feral screams. Very sort of like Reavers kind of style. Firefly. People have kind of gone mad and lost their humanity. Yeah, these are mainly just stat blocks. As well as the Firstborn. Very cool. You have elves and giants and primordials and trolls and Varu, which are wolf people. And beasts and horrors and stuff. It's a very cool setting. I would think about running a D&D game in it, or a D&D style game. Just because I like other systems more than the Iron system. I'm not a huge fan of the powered by the apocalypse system and things like it. Because I always feel like I'm rolling a bunch of dice and I'm not making a lot of headway. That system always feels to me like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's just a personal preference. I prefer to have a little bit more just blanket success or failure. Whereas I think in those systems, I feel like it's a little too often that you have success at a cost. It's one of the things that, and then trying to narrate that consistently over and over and over and over and over again, I feel like is really burdensome. Whether I'm DMing it for somebody, like running it for somebody, or trying to do a little bit easier when it's a solo game, because since I get to play both sides of the table, I'm a little bit more loosey-goosey with it. But that's hard to do when you're trying to explain situations to other people and have them give their own input back to the situation. You need a little bit more structure, usually. I think at this point I'm just rambling. So let's go ahead and call it for today. Hey, if you watched this video to this point, thanks for coming along. I would appreciate it. Like the like thing. And hey, if you want to see more stuff like this, we have a first one where I set up all this stuff. You can go check that out, as well as some other stuff. We also do a solo RPG stream. We do those on Saturdays, so you can come check those out. Well, let's talk about some other stuff. I'll probably talk about something else later this week, probably on Thursday. I don't know what's going to be yet. Sure, I will figure it out. Other things? Hey, if you could leave a comment, that'd be great. Engagement's always nice. So, thank you in advance. I think that's it. There's other stuff down in the description. You can find it. I assume you can read, hopefully. If you can't read, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be rude. That's it. Thanks for hanging out, guys. I'll see you guys real soon. All right? Bye.